Welcome to the Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Guiding you to financial freedom today is my co-host, John Ostenson. John is the CEO of FanBridge Consulting and former president of Shelf Genie. And today we're going to talk about franchising. So, John, thanks for, I don't know if we reached out to you, if you reached out to us. You're just here in front of me, and I love talking about business. So, welcome to the Wiser Retirement Podcast. Glad you're here.
Casey, thanks for having me. Love talking about the F word, franchise. And, what I found is when people say franchise, people think fast food, right? Or maybe a hotel, but there's so many other opportunities that I know we'll dig into today. So excited to be with you. And just a quick blurb on my background. Like so many of your listeners, I spent many years in the corporate world and, with larger companies, had the desire to do something more entrepreneurial, step out on my own. Kind of stumbled into franchising about 8 years ago there on the franchisor side. And that's when I had the light bulb moment where I saw all these different backgrounds getting involved in franchising and therefore, business ownership. We helped them connect the dots and supported them and really fell in love with the model and, love helping other entrepreneurs and investors get plugged in.
So tell me how you got started in franchising. What was because you said you were in corporate world. At some point you got tired of the rat race and you did what?
Yeah, no, it was with Accenture and then grad school, went with Carter's Oshkosh B'gosh for many years. And after a really good run and, could have done that forever, but I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, stumbled into Shelf Genie through some mutual contacts, had the opportunity to come in, serve as their president, really supporting our operations day in, day out, all of these newly minted business owners all across North America. And, really, as I said, that's where I fell in love with the model. But, long story short, I ended up partnering with the founder of Shelf Genie. We spun off. We've invested in franchises together on the franchisee side. I've got good people running my businesses, and it allows me to spend most of my time helping other entrepreneurs and investors around the country get plugged into franchising and understand what their options are and how to go about finding the right one.
So one of the things you talk about is you're in non-food franchises versus food. So what's the difference? Obviously, I understand one has food and one doesn't, but is there a structural difference? Is there a time commitment difference? Why do we distinguish this way?
Yeah, a lot of guys do really well with food and, but I think there are easier ways to make money. That's been my experience. And that's my background where most of our clients come from is, hey, we want anything but food. And some of the reasons, and I'll say we need the food guys, we support them, but there are easier ways to make money in that oftentimes you have less capital expenditures on the front end. You're less susceptible to consumer whims. Think frozen yogurt. That was big until it wasn't. Oftentimes fewer employees, less operating hours, and a little less trendy and such. So you also don't have the food waste, and therefore you oftentimes get higher margins in other industries. So again, there are guys that do really well with food, but I think that some of these other categories, whether it be home and property services or health and wellness or things like kids, pets, seniors, things that regardless of the economy, people are going to spend on, that are a little more needs-based in nature. That's just where we see most of the interest today.
Do you see non-food as being more passive? Is that what you're thinking?
We certainly have opportunities to gear themselves towards more passive, and that's a big topic. There are only a couple that are truly passive where the franchisor essentially runs it for you. But the nice thing is with franchising and in a lot of these industries that we cover, there's that potential for semi-passive where you're not buying yourself a job. Now, I don't want to ever sugarcoat it. It still takes a lot of work to stand up a business, right? Whether it be franchised or non-franchised. Certainly with a franchise, you start on third base. You've got a lot more figured out stepping into it. But that semi-passive or executive models, we oftentimes call it, if you have a good operator that you put in place, that franchisor can really be a great support mechanism for their day-to-day needs. And so it takes some of the burden off of you as the owner. The buck still stops with you, but you get a whole lot of support and allows you to either keep that day job or keep your eye on your current business.
So I had this conversation with people, not, I would say frequently, but not real frequently, but it starts off with, I want to own a business or I just want to buy a franchise and I need to find one that has, could generate some good cash flow. What I never hear is I have an interest in this and I found a franchise that does this. So, what is the proper way to be searching for a franchise opportunity?
Yeah, we certainly have some clients like, I think of a real estate broker recently that has a good sized team that came to us and said, hey, I'm interested in getting into property management. Do I get started on my own or should I buy a franchise? And ultimately he
Mhm.
bought the franchise that we introduced him to and has done very well with it. But I'd say for the vast majority of people, probably over 90%, they come to us and say, hey, John, I live in Omaha and, I don't know what my market needs. I don't know what I'm interested in. But I'd love to get your thoughts on it. And so what I'll come back to them with is, hey, after doing a little bit of research to check on a few things around availability, if I were in your shoes, based on what you've shared with me, based on your background, based on the role you're looking at taking in the business, here are the top 10 or so opportunities that are available in Omaha that I would want to be looking at if I were you. And we certainly hit on different industries. But the benefit is we work with over 600 franchise brands, and we see firsthand the franchisors, that leadership team. We see their track record, not only industry experience, we also want to see franchise experience. The financial models, the competitive advantages, all those types of things filter into how we evaluate them.
So basically, you have a book and you go to a zip code and you say, this is what is missing in this space. Perhaps we could open up this type of franchise. Do I have that correct?
It's a tag team approach. And so we would know that franchise doesn't have a presence there. I mean, you're always going to have mom and pop competition and different fragmented industries there in the market. But it's really kind of a tag team. The franchisor is going to help you understand who is the competition, how do we compete against them. What I'm looking at primarily is, hey, assuming there's no seasonality component to where you live and such, has this business done well in similar markets across the U.S.? And does it align well with your investment range and what you're looking to do? But I don't try to be too prescriptive in guessing which one out of the 10. Oftentimes the 3 that I would have guessed they would choose to talk to end up being a totally different 3.
Interesting. Okay. So doesn't a lot of franchising or how your ability to choose a franchise doesn't have a lot to do with how much money how much capital you have initially?
Yeah, it's a wide range of investment opportunities. Certainly we have some clients that are getting into 7-figure deals, but most of those that we work with, when you look at the franchise fee, the startup cost, and several months of working capital built into an all-in investment range, oftentimes they're in the, call it 150 to 300,000 range. And some are using cash to fund it. Most are using cash plus leverage via an SBA loan. SBA lenders love franchising because it's more predictable, obviously. Some are using an old retirement plan, which you're probably familiar with this program, the ROBS program, where they can roll over their 401k or IRA and set up the business as a C corp, purchase the business that way, and then pay themselves a salary. So different ways of getting involved, but that's directionally where we see it.
Okay, and then what would you say is the average age of the person? Do you see young people doing this, or is it more post-career people looking to have an entrepreneurship streak, or who's your normal clientele?
Yeah, I've got a 24-year-old client that's been incredibly successful up in North Carolina, but the sweet spot, I'd say, where most of the people are is somewhere in the mid-30s to mid-50s, where they know enough to be dangerous. They don't want to go work for someone else again, sit through the interview process. They say, I want to build my own empire instead of someone else's. And so, for a lot of them, it may be their first time stepping into business ownership. But like I said, we do have a lot of existing business owners too that say, hey, I'm looking to either complement or diversify my current business. And maybe franchising is worth looking at. Some of those are too entrepreneurial, and I have to tell them that, hey, you would want to put your thumbprint all over everything and this isn't going to be the right fit. But the majority of them say, hey, John, we know the hard work that goes into figuring out your technology stack and optimizing your marketing and, blah, 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 procurement. We would much rather start on third base, to be cliche, where it's all about going out and executing. And oftentimes they may have a young employee or a young guy in their church or what have you that they say, hey, I want to give them some responsibility and kind of coach them and let them lead the charge.
Right. So you mentioned SBA. So other than SBA, is there any other route for financing?
Yeah, there's certainly some non-SBA loans. We work with a couple of providers on those, but I'd say SBA is most common, and you can always pay that back early. But no, there are definitely some non-SBA opportunities. And then we have some clients that will use a margin loan against their portfolio, or they'll use a HELOC, different ways to tap into funds.
Yeah. Okay. What when you think about non well, uh, we talked about this a little bit before we went live here, but when you think about franchising, uh, there the ones that I've run into in my experience have been very franchisor happy contracts. Like basically, they're going to get all this money up front before you get to make your money, and or they're over promising, and you start doing the math, and you're like, man, you gotta have to go, you're gonna have to go repair, 30 car windshields a day to make 80 grand a year. And I think that's, I don't know if that's that's kind of work you want to be doing. Um, what are some things to look out for in a bad franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like any industry, you're going to have good players and you're going to have those you don't want to align yourself with. I mean, it's in every industry, and that's certainly true in franchising as well. And that's where we come in to try to help our clients. So, kind of hitting on your two questions there. One, our whole exploration process is designed so that you really go in eyes wide open. So, it's not just the FDD document that you read ahead of time, but it's also, stands for Franchise Disclosure Document. You get to talk to other owners within their system that are living it day in, day out, asking them about their ramp up and their experience and what they would do differently. You're going to get a lot of presentations given to you on different topics. Technically, all the numbers in that FDD have to be ticked and tied, by an outside accounting firm. But sometimes it may be a small sample size, and if that's the case, then I say, hey, let's take a conservative approach, in our performance. As far as the FDD goes, the legal piece of it, it is. You read it, you say, gosh, this is the most one-sided document, in the franchisor's favor. But I always encourage my clients to ask the question why as you go through it. Most of the provisions in there will never come to pass, but the franchisor doesn't want them. It's to protect them. So if you bought that franchise in Omaha, well, if your neighbor in Kansas City decides they're going to run the brand, off the rails, and that's going to end up hurting you, you would want that franchisor to be able to step in and, after a lot of coaching, take back the franchise rights from them, or you come in and run that. Franchisor is not looking to come operate in your market. The only case they would do that is maybe if there was a national account that, they need to preserve that relationship, and you just haven't been receptive to coaching over time. So, I think understanding the why behind a lot of provisions in there helps you read it and understand better. As a former franchisor myself, I wanted to keep my franchisees happy. If I ticked off one or two of them, they talked to their buddies, and all of a sudden I had a bunch of headaches and a really bad day. So, it's a good franchisor is going to be looking to serve their franchisees and make them successful, because the better they do, the better they do.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
So as you build a franchise up, you should be able to resell it. In most agreements that you look at, are you selling back to the franchisor, or are you selling to another third party that has to be approved by the franchisor? How does that what's the exit strategy on these?
Yeah, private equity loves franchising. You do see some cases where they'll come in and buy, individual locations. I can cite examples of that, but for the most part, you're selling to another prospective franchisee. You would want the franchisor to have to, approve them, right? Again, to protect you from someone else reselling theirs. The franchisor's interest is for the continuity of that location. So unless this guy's a true knucklehead, I mean, they're going to likely approve them. I don't see that as an issue too often. a very natural exit strategy is to sell to adjacent franchisees or others within the system. I've personally sold to other franchisees. I've also bought from other franchisees to expand my footprint. So it is nice that you have a natural exit. And there's been research done in some studies that show that in like-kind industries, franchises actually trade at a higher multiple than non-franchised businesses in those same industries. So, I think there's value to a reseller because if you're going in and buying an existing franchise location, there can always be changes. Day one, you could lose a couple of key employees. Whenever you have a change in ownership, let's say any business,
Right.
I think they take comfort in knowing that there's someone on the sidelines, that franchisor is supporting them, and they're not in it all by themselves.
When you're going through the franchise selection process, are you coaching people as you get to know people? Do you find yourself saying this wouldn't be the best fit for you, or are you just kind of letting people figure this out on their own?
Yeah, I think it's a balance between the two. I most of my clients, want to know my perspective because I've seen a lot, and I've been very blessed to actually do more placements than anybody in the country the last couple of years. So just get to see so much, and I've been a franchisor. I am a franchisee. So I'm definitely offering up those perspectives. I will have clients sometimes that are headstrong that want to, they're the smartest guy in the room, and you kind of have to step aside, let them do their thing. But by and large, most of our clients are very receptive to feedback and looking to me to be that guide and coach for them.
What are some of the biggest challenges you see if you're either choosing or just even after you've made the choice and you've started a franchise, you've decided to go down this path? What are some things that you think that people are surprised about?
Yeah, I always tell folks that if you think it's going to take 10 hours a week running a semi-absentee, it's probably going to take 15. Early on, it may even take 20. I think sometimes people go in thinking that, hey, because it's an executive model, I'm not going to have to put much time in. And there are a few where you really don't have to put much time in. But by and large, you're probably spending a little bit more time than you think. It may take a little bit longer to ramp up. That's why I always want us to be conservative in our performance. I mean, getting a business off the ground, there's a lot that goes into that. But for the most part, just like with any business, I'd say the personnel side of it, right? If you've got a great operator in there, life's easy. Thinking of a client that does about $40 million a year in revenue across 6 franchise brands. He owns about 30 different licenses in, I think 10 or 11 states. Every year he comes to me and says, hey, John, let's do another franchise deal together. I've got a young guy that I want to promote to go run this. Well, he's not involved in the day-to-day, right? But I think early on, for people, until you find good operators, you're going to have to lean in a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. When you look at franchises and you see the business landscape is really changing. There's more online now than there were 10, 15 years ago. You think about AI and its role. I mean, that's a whole new industry. I get emails every day. Hey, let us come into your firm. And I have all kinds of great ideas of how AI can solve problems for me. Problem is the data's all in India or Pakistan. And I'm like, yeah, not ready yet. We need to do this internally. We can't let our data just go out there. But is there anything new that you've seen that you're super excited about that just is a little different than maybe what we're traditionally used to in franchising?
Yeah, certainly I'd say some of the ones just that we've seen the most action in recently. It's businesses that, and I'm invested in one of these in Minneapolis myself, but it's a business that does concrete paving and line striping. I mean, talk about non-sexy niches. Businesses like containment walls, where it's almost more of an equipment rental business, around construction and renovation sites. Little niches, dumpsters, insulation, which is a $50 billion industry, highly fragmented. Most people can't name a brand. So it's things like that. It's men's health, it's mental health. Health and wellness is on everyone's mind these days. It's in-home senior care. And then I just had some clients in Boise that came back after buying an in-home senior care business with us last fall. They just purchased a business that does wheelchair ramps and stair lifts and mobility solutions within a restaurant bathroom, for instance. So, great complement to that business. But I think people want to age in place. What are those macro dynamics that are going on? Everyone got a pet during COVID. That there are always going to be needs. We've had clients do very well with dog training. People are always going to spend on their kids. Youth soccer. We placed 6 or 7 clients there. They've all come back and bought additional locations, have done very well. So, it's a wide variety. And what I found, kind of to your question earlier, over 90% of our clients end up choosing something that was never on their radar. So I really enjoy the validation of seeing them have that light bulb moment, running with the idea, and then when they come back and buy additional locations or additional brands, it gets me excited.
It's interesting. I tell my kids all the time, I said, you go to college, you get a degree in something, and people are going to push you to be a doctor, a lawyer, financial guy, all these traditional things. But from my position, I work with hundreds of families, and I see where wealth is generated, and typically has very little to do with anything related to college.
Right.
Now, all my kids are going to college, but the point is, when you say concrete, I mean, we have a family here that does concrete work, and he does some really cool projects. Like, this is big boy stuff, like raising interstates, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And it's amazing how much revenue he generates from that. But you just need to understand how to operate a business, and does franchising help you do that? Because you can have, here's my fear. My fear is that someone buys a franchise that buy themselves a job, right? We talked about Michael Gerber earlier in the E-Myth. Like how do they have this entrepreneurial seizure? They buy themselves a job. How do you coach them into, hey, you have to learn how to run and scale and grow this thing, right? You don't buy it and clients just show up, right? Yeah. You still got to be a salesperson. You still got to get there and move the brand, right?
Yeah, it absolutely can be a job. For most people, though, they understand that coming in, you put that business owner hat on instead of that employee hat. You're buying an asset that's going to, once you run it well, it's going to cash flow. You're going to have an exit one day, so you're not just, you couldn't do that in a normal W-2 job, right? But you also get tax strategies. I mean, the fact is the tax code's written in favor of business owners and real estate investors. And so there's so many things you can do against an active income expense standpoint when you own a business on the side. It can really be a big help that way. So that's one thought. As far as those that are most successful in franchising, I say it's two things. And it's not your background or your experience. I mean, obviously some of that can help, but most of our clients are getting into things they have no background in. Doctors getting into, we just had one buy a restoration business, mold remediation, and again, the niches. But the two things that I coach people on are, one, you've got to be good with people, right? To be in business in general, you've got to be someone that people want to work for, somebody that people want to work with. And then secondly, follow the system. I had some clients recently, it was kind of, I keep talking about home services here, but it was a gutter business, which is a $6 billion a year industry. It's not gutter cleaning, it's gutter installs. Well, I've had 10 clients purchase this business. One of them did 1.3 million in their very first year. I've had clients do very, very well. But I did have a client that decided to go out of business. And every now and then that happens, not very often. But in his case, I spoke with the CEO of the franchise and said, what happened? All my other clients are doing well. He said, John, we've come in, we've coached him, we've done everything we can. He won't follow the system. He just doesn't listen. And so it sounds cliche, but when I was at Shelf Genie and I looked across all of our owners running the same business across different markets in the U.S., our best franchisees were the ones that followed the system.
Yeah. Yeah. So a true entrepreneur probably is not going to want to listen to other people telling them what to do. So you're an entrepreneur, but at the same time, you're willing to follow the mold of those who figured this out prior to you. So I think that's a good takeaway there, is that you're not going in to be your own boss necessarily. We all have bosses. I have thousands of bosses, right? And it's the client, but you got to be able to play well in the sandbox.
Exactly. And a good franchisor is going to give you some leeway to innovate, try new things. Yeah. But by and large, you're going in, you're executing.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So can you tell me what your favorite one is? What's your favorite franchise?
My favorite one. There's one. Yeah.
This is just me thinking, is that I get up in the morning and I'm super excited about making a difference in people's lives as a fee-only advisor that's not selling crap to its clients, right? It's like we're actually making a difference. I get excited about that. Yeah. But if I had to get up in the morning and I knew that I had 10 annuities I had to go sell, and I don't care who I sold them to, just the system only works for me if I sell my 10 annuities, I would be miserable. I wouldn't do it, for one, but two, it'd be a miserable experience. So there's got to be something you're passionate about. Obviously, it's connecting people with franchises. That's your business, right? But for you personally, is there one that, as far as running a franchise, you would say is this is top of my list?
Yeah, I love the in-home care senior space. I just think that that's a way that you can truly serve and give back. And obviously there's, good financial returns too. But we had probably a dozen clients last year around the country that bought into in-home senior care. And I mentioned the ones that do the wheelchair ramps and stair lifts as well. Mm-hmm. There's so many businesses that are complementary to that, where it's just more ways to serve and you're getting involved in the community. Certainly if you want to get involved in the Chamber of Commerce or sponsor, local teams, just getting the name out there. But, with the in-home care, there's a business that I'm invested in on the franchisor side. It's actually based out of Marietta, Art of Drawers, which is custom pull-out shelving for your kitchens and pantries. Our target demographic is on the older side, and it's providing accessibility solutions, helping people age in place, have access to things in their kitchen and pantries, and people love that product. It just puts a smile on their face. You could say that's a little more discretionary, but it's a niche business. It's probably a $60 million industry in the U.S., and they do a good chunk of that. So, I love the niches, and I love kind of the macro trends around areas where you're able to serve people, like in-home.
What common mistakes do you think that new franchisees make?
Yeah, I think not following the system and maybe underestimating the time that they'll need to put into the business.
Okay, and then what's the best advice you have for people looking to get into this?
Yeah, first off, it's entirely free to work with us. I'm essentially a real estate broker, but for franchises, we simply get a referral fee on the back end. None of that's passed on for clients. So, really, there's no downside to getting off the couch and starting to learn and educating yourself. I'd say come out, order our book, or feel free to order our book, Non-Food Franchising, or I'll give a free copy to all of your listeners too if they reach out via the link below. So, it's a great primer. It'll help you fill in the gaps and understanding how franchising works, what's going on the franchise landscape today. So I'd say take a step. I always say activity breeds activity. And I think when you start moving towards option A or option B, that's when option C comes out of left field and surprises you. So, I encourage people, just take a first step, educate yourself, and find out what so many other entrepreneurs and investors are doing. We've never seen so much interest in what we're doing. And I think there are a lot of macro reasons for it.
Yeah, we have a little over, it's growing now. It's probably greater than a third of our client base are airline pilots. And then, a lot of guys, it's very lucrative to pick up extra trips right now. But a lot of them don't. And I'd say being an airline pilot is the best part-time job a person can have, especially right now. So this fits well with something that they would be doing. And immediately I thought about, are you talking about, just more blue collar type things, but fencing, temporary fencing. Is there a franchise for temporary fencing?
Yeah, temporary walls around containment, containment sites, for renovations and such. But we've had clients do very well in traditional fencing as well. So
okay.
Gosh, it's those businesses you don't think of until you see them in front of you, and it's like
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
I'm trying to think of others. The people around here, at least in Marietta where we're based, we have, I think, 3 or 4 like rock yards. You can come get different types of rock, stone. Is that something that ever gets franchised, or is that pretty much a local thing where people are just sourcing from the local quarry and wood shop?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in particular out there on the market. But you will have some that are unique. There's so many just little niches out there, and when you think about like entertainment or family related, there's a lot.
Oh, the jumpy houses, I see those all the time. I wonder if that's a franchise.
Yeah, they're jumpy houses. They're photo booths. I have a client in Marietta. I don't do food often, right? We talked about that, but I do have one that's done very well with donut trucks, food trucks, and super high margins because there's very little food waste, and you're selling high margin items like coffee, lemonade. The donut batter doesn't go bad for a year. There's a viewing window. They make the donuts right in front of you. There's some novelty to it. So,
right.
Yeah, no, it's done well.
That's cool. Now, are they driving themselves, or they put somebody in there to work it?
Yeah, put someone in there, and you typically have 2 employees. Sometimes occasionally just 1. But you can take these to events, to high school football games, to carnivals. But you can also just leave them parked outside an outlet mall. Up 75, you got some of those. So,
we in small towns. I go to a lot of small towns. In small towns, many years ago, we all lost Radio Shack. That was like where we went for local electronics. I every time I'm like in Starkville, Mississippi, or I'm up in Highlands, North Carolina, and I forget my Apple charger, I'm like, there should be a small electronics store that just is in every small town. And obviously it didn't work because the internet can deliver it, but Amazon takes 2 days to deliver. I needed it yesterday. Do you see any franchises around tech at all? Is any of that emerging?
Yeah, there's some that will buy back your tech, more of a reseller type play. They buy your used iPhones. There's certainly some that will fix your iPhone or what have you. I don't see too many that are pure play retail where it's, again, because you can get them from Amazon the same day these days. So,
not in rural towns. Not in rural towns.
Most of our clients like things that won't be disruptive, but in a rural town, you probably don't have the population base to support a business either. So sometimes you have to.
Which is why Radio Shack went into business.
A large territory, right, to support it. So
right.
The franchisor looks at all the demographics at the zip code level to make sure that you're going into a market that that you should be set up for success in.
That's cool. Well, what is your web address? How do our clients find you if they're interested in learning more about franchising?
Yeah, come out to franbridgeconsulting.com. That's FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. You should have a pop-up there. Leave your email address, and we'll reach out with multiple options for downloading our book. And then if you'd like to take the next step, again, it's entirely free to work with us. I'd be happy to jump on a call, and we can share some thoughts back and forth and see if it makes sense to take more steps.
All right, John. Thank you for your time today and helping us learn more about franchising. It's I guess I do have one last question as we head out here. What's the benefit of doing franchising versus if you just start the business on your own?
Yeah, I said it before, but you start on third base. And what I mean by that is, you've got marketing that's already somewhat optimized because it's been run in other markets, that they're going to be running for you. You may have that supply chain you're buying in bulk, whether it be for services or product. You've got a coach on the sidelines in that franchisor. You've got other franchisees, so there's some community there where you're exchanging best practices and learnings. I think that, over time, that brand, may be recognizable, but I'd say it's less about the brand. It's more about the support that you're getting. It's more about, again, being in business for yourself, but not by yourself, having that support mechanism. You pay a royalty back to the franchisor, but in most cases, those are for things that you would be paying for anyway as a small business owner. It's just that it's being funneled through the franchisor. So, I think for anyone that's looking to get into business ownership, it's at least worth it to take a look at franchising, see if it might be a fit.
Sounds good. Thanks again, John.
Enjoyed it, Casey. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced by Rachel Dotson. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investor advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guests may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guests of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.